computer. Hello, everyone. Yes, and so this is Neil speaking, and I will be taking you on this study tour later this year. That will be in November. And the purpose of the study tour is actually to gain you a credit, a equivalent credit unit in your study, in your undergraduate study. And more importantly, to gain you real experience of what overseas businesses are all about. And that's something you will not experience by just staying here in Australia. So, what I'm going to do in this very short session is tell you a little bit about myself, then what are the main things that we will be doing if you join the tour and come along with us for those 2 weeks. So, a little bit about myself. I've lived in Asia for about 30 years. So you have been longer in Australia than me in the last 30 years. I've just came back 2 years ago. And before that, I was in Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong for 22 years. So I know the landscape in Hong Kong very well. And during that time, I got to visit a lot of factories. And when I mean factories, I mean stuff like this, going into factories where we actually see on the ground how the things that you may buy on Amazon or Temu, or you go into JB Hi-Fi or any of household places in Australia, you purchase. This is where things are assembled. And so part of this study tour is to show this. But I've done many, many factory tours. I've got over 40 documented here. And this is something that I really want to bring to your own eyes and experience about, okay, what is it about a business that makes things and makes a profit in global export markets? Ah, all right. So that's one side of me. That is, I've spent a lot of time in Hong Kong. I've worked at Hong Kong University, City University of Hong Kong, Baptist University, Hong Kong. I've taught in Fudan University in China, and I've gone across the border many, many times and done some factory audits for US clients, going back many, many years ago, where I've had to go into a factory and do a full inspection and audit to tell the client should they buy from factory A or factory B and so forth. So this is part of my experience that I'm bringing to this unit, and so in that way, I feel that you're going to get very high value from this, just because I'm not treating this more as a tour guide. I would likely be taking you to factories that I've been to myself. So I know the terrain in Hong Kong. All right, so that's a bit about myself. And I grew up in Mildura and left Australia in 1996 and just came back 2 years ago. So, um, my background probably no different from yours. I grew up on a farm in Mildura and thought I'd be an accountant in the future, but I ended up doing so much more than that. All right. So, what is this Hong Kong study tour? Basically, there are 2 weeks, and during those 2 weeks, there are probably 5 or 6 main day excursions. What do we mean by that? That in week one, you'll do 2 or 3 major excursions, one day. All right. So that's 2 or 3 days. And then you'll spend 1 or 2 days in a university, consolidating or doing some interactive exercises. For the total part, your time is going to be used up of about probably 4 days in week one and 4 days in week two. And that's the kind of the commitment that we want to have structured in the schedule. So in week one, we are planning to go to the Hutchinson port, which is one of the largest container terminal facility in Hong Kong. And just to give you an idea, this container port you see here does about 35 million TFUs. That's 20-foot container foot capacity units per year. And that is about that is nearly 10 times the size of Port Melbourne, which I live down in Port Melbourne here. Port Melbourne is only 1/10 the size of this one here. All right. And the other thing, on another day in week one, we're going to visit the Cathay Pacific and their cargo terminal at the airport, the air freight hub. So all about air freight, and a lot of stuff that you buy on Temu in Australia comes to you via air freight, not via sea, because they're small packages and relatively light, and they're not consolidated into one big container and then put on a ship where you have to wait 4 or 5 weeks for delivery. They're put in a plane and sent here overnight. That's why you can get packages very quickly when you order online. All right, enough about that. That's sort of week one. And then during that week, we'll probably hopefully go and visit the Mills Incubator Project, which is very big. It's like a startup incubator area in Hong Kong where startups explore hardware and software business value propositions to execute to try and make their millions of dollars. So that's week one. And then in week two, just brief highlights. We're going to be going to the one of the largest container, sorry, one of the largest electronic component supermarkets in the world, where you could basically go here and buy everything that you need to make your own smartphone. That's what we mean. And this is amazing that you need to see for yourself. What you see here are electronic components, not the products you see in JV Hi-Fi, but the actual components that go into those products. Wow. Why do you need to know that, Neil? Because when you go and visit these factories, which we hope to do in week two, you will actually get to see how these components are assembled together to make the products that you see in JV Hi-Fi. So for example, this one at the top, which I'm organizing, I've been to before, Joyhung, they make smartphones. The one in the middle, I've been to twice, they do the OEM for Sony. So you know those Sony headphones you buy, just like these, all right? It's not a Sony, it's a Bose, but the noise cancelling headphones, a lot of them are made by this OEM manufacturer here. And then finally, we'll be visiting a large foreign-owned contract manufacturer, which does everything from prototyping to mass production, which is really a comprehensive assembly operation where if you've got your own prototype, you can go to this factory and then they could put your prototype into mass production. The top two factories won't do that for you, but this bottom one can do that. And so by the time you finish week two, in terms of these visits as well as this large supermarket, you'll have a much better understanding of, wow, I've never seen anything like this in Australia. And wow, what does it, why does it cost $200 or $300 for one of these headphones when these factories can make them for FOB, 40 or 50 US dollars? Who's making that profit? What if I want to develop my own special headphone and then sell overseas in Australia, US, or everywhere? How much margin do I need to build in? And you can start to think about the business side of manufacturing once you've visited the manufacturer's themselves. And in week one, when you visit the logistics side of things, you can understand the costs of actually getting your assembled product from the factory to distribution. So you're actually, by the end of these 2 weeks, you're going to gain a lot of insights into, well, how do we bring a product to market, like a real product to market? And that product could be simple as a little pen like this, or it could be something like a pair of reading glasses that has a 1 uh, 1+, 2+, 3+ magnifying lens. It could be anything, or it could be a water bottle. You'll have an idea of, oh, I know where to go. I know that the FOB is $20. I really need to be able to sell that product for $80 in that foreign market to make a profit. And so you'll actually learn a lot about how real hardware business is done in this world by outsourcing to global supply chains. And so that's the long and short of the real experience that we will bring you to in those 2 weeks. That is on the specific study side. Now, I said 4 days in each week. And what do we mean? At least 2 to 3 days over those 2 weeks will be spent at Hong Kong Metropolitan University, where you'll be in your groups, maybe after the visit, and then we come and spend 2 or 3 hours or a morning or an afternoon in the university where you actually get to consolidate some of your learning, work in groups, maybe work on your report, and then you might do that in the morning. So on the Monday, we might go do the Monday or Tuesday, we might do the container terminal visit in week one. And then the following morning, we might go to the university where we actually do the actual group interactions where we just consolidate our information. And maybe that goes over into lunch with some faculty at the university, maybe 1, 2 hours in the afternoon, but then that finishes the day. And, I would imagine 1 or 2 days of doing that after the visits. And so you'll find that you'll have free time, especially on the weekends, to not have to do the visit or visit the university, and free time actually most evenings, especially on the non-visit evenings, because most of the shops in Hong Kong are open till 9 or 10 p.m. at night, unlike in many places in Australia. And so we'll actually be able to take you to, for example, the Sam Shui Po or the Temple Street night market one evening. On the Friday afternoon or on a Saturday or a Sunday, we'll organise a trip to the Peak where we may walk from the Central District all the way up to the Peak, where you have the view over Hong Kong. You go and past Hong Kong U and up to the Peak. And then that walk is some exercise in itself. It's not really a hike because you're actually following a nice granulated path. And those who want to do a little bit more rigorous exercise, I can take you on a harder hike if you want to. That would take one morning or one afternoon. And so there's lots of, there's sightseeing activities in terms of a walking tour that I can take you around the streets of Hong Kong, going up to the Peak, and doing a hike into one of the famous hiking trails in Hong Kong. Plus, you've got the 2 or 3 visits in week one and the 2 or 3 visits in week two that were tentatively planned. So there's lots of interesting things that we would like to show you if you join this tour. And in a nutshell, you're probably thinking, well, what do you have to do to actually pass the unit? Well, you basically, by attending and visiting, you will pass when you get those reports done And in some ways, there's three different areas that we want you to do, and I'm here to help you to make sure that you can get to the end of these projects. And it's not like you have to write a lot. It's much more reflective because you can always ask AI to write 5,000 words, but we're more interested in your reflections of your learning, and maybe you can add photos of your trip as well on, in your report. But we're really thinking about before the trip, getting a request for quotation from a supplier in China, and I'll teach you how to do that. And the actual time that takes to get a request for quotation, maybe you have to wait and then actually putting it together. That would only take about 1 or 2 or 3 hours of work at the most. And it's a very, very simple approach. Why am I asking you to do that? Because you're going to learn how to interact with a supplier online. And then several weeks later, when you go on the trip, you actually go and visit a real supplier in China to see, okay, this is what I asked for my quotation, and this is what it looks like on the ground when I actually visit a factory that would supply that quotation. And so I really want you to sort of get the insight from both sides in that way. The reflection on the logistics and startup environment and a short presentation when you come back on your whole visit. And always, we want to incorporate a little presentation because we always want to encourage you to express yourself emotionally and visibly in terms of your learning, because that's very important in how you develop your capabilities for when you go for job interviews and for when you seek out positions in the future. So these are just some of the initial, I guess, more of the administrative side of the or the reporting side of the trip. Not that burdensome because, as I said, when you have time at the university on the trip, you can start to put things together. And again, we're really focusing on your reflective skills rather than your factual skills from doing a search over the internet, which you could do without doing a visit altogether. I'm really more interested in your reflections and your aha moments from your actual being there on the ground. What are the things that you learn because you're actually there, seeing it all by yourself. So I think that's the exciting part of some of the assessment parts of this trip. And so, in conclusion, yes, the academic learning, but very important, you got industry exposure, but also there will be cultural experiences, not only seeing parts of Hong Kong, meeting faculty at Hong Kong Metropolitan University, but also meeting factory owners, factory workers. Wow, just amazing, amazing, amazing trip. And I'm so excited because, like, as I said, I've spent years visiting these factories that I want to take you through. And it's something that it is just totally eye-opening and just changes your perspective about um, what is happening in one of Australia's close neighbours and largest trading neighbour in the world. And so I think that's very important for you to know that, especially for your future business career. So let me just stop there. I'm going to stop the recording, and well, before we stop the recording, I think, you know, what is going to happen in terms of, you're going to ask questions about the travel. The travel will be paid for. You'll be going there as a group. most likely on a Saturday directly to Hong Kong at the beginning, and then would probably meet on the Sunday, just like a pre-brief before everything starts in Hong Kong. It's very important that there's a few things that I would say in terms of what we need to do administratively, and more detail will come with that, and that is by making sure that you do have a passport, and you will have to supply your passport, because for some of the tour sites that we have to go to, we have to pre-arrange or pre-book the group site visit. Um, so, for example, the with the cargo terminal, they have to you'll probably be going through a customs area, and so therefore we have to um, pre-book that visit by showing all the passports of each visitor in that group, for that to be pre-approved before we can actually do that visit for that cargo terminal, for example. So there's little logistics like that that we will work out in time. But the important thing of this short presentation I've done now was just to show you of all the different things that we will be doing. So I'm just going to stop here and welcome you to ask lots of questions, ensure up any concerns that you have, and really looking forward to you joining this tour, because it is just going to be totally amazing. And, you know, I love Hong Kong so much that I'm a permanent resident of Hong Kong as well as an Australian citizen. So that's, my two loves I have in this to country loves that I have in this life. And so I just love to show students the other country that I have spent a lot of my lifetime in this life. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video or in the email. I'm just going to stop the recording now.